Well, for anybody who doesn't know you two, tell us a bit about yourselves, your family, and what do you do during the day whenever you aren't here?
Okay, thank you. Well, if anybody doesn't know me, I'm Mandy and this is William. And we had to think about it, but we have been married 25 years in July, which sounds ridiculous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Any
Done well.
big anniversary plans?
No. Not really.
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, there might be. And we are very blessed to have two boys. Well, they're men now. Connor, 21, and Jamie, who's 19. And you are a classroom assistant who works in Tarview. And I am a nursery teacher who works in Kilkilly, and you're currently in the nursery, and I'm in the nursery, so there's a lot of joy when we come home of an evening to explain our days.
Great. Well, great to have you both here. You said there 25 years married. I was going to ask you what's your secret, but first of all, how do you first get together?
Okay, so I think I'll take the responsibility for this one. I used to be a chef many years ago, and I worked as a chef down in a cafe in the town here. And we had Saturday girls would have come in and worked on Saturdays, waitressing and on tables and doing dishes. And Mandy was one of those young ladies, and you came to work in 1996. So for 2 years, I was blissfully unaware of, So it basically, unconventionally, Mandy made the first move.
Oh.
She phoned me up. She was very, when I think about it now, it's a miracle we actually even got married, let alone nearly 25 years marriage. I think I said you were very brave. You were on the phone. You were quite, and I said, what was what I said?
I was trying to ask you for a walk. I was trying to invite him out for a walk, and then I got all flustered, and he just said, "Now just take a big deep breath, take your time."
Honestly, it's said as a miracle. So yeah, that's how we.
And you've been telling her just to take a big breath for 25 years.
Ever since.
It's not as bad as you think.
I think it's the other way around, maybe.
That's great. So tell us then, how do you both become Christians?
Well, I had the pleasure and the absolute privilege and blessing of growing up in a Christian family. So we would have been in church, in Sunday school, and we would have been hearing about, Jesus. We would have been hearing stories, from the Bible. So, and living in a Christian home where my folks were Christians, and it was a very natural thing to. I never, if I think about life, I never remember a time where I didn't actually believe in God. I love creation, I love nature, I love all that, and I could clearly see that. I could clearly see the plan of a creator behind all that. So as a young chap, I became a Christian. I think I was 11 years old, still in P7 at the time, and that's how I became a Christian.
Great. Mandy?
Thank you. Yes, I also had the privilege of being raised in a Christian family, and we all attended Valley Home Methodist Church, which was my home church for a long time, and I was heavily involved in the youth fellowship then, and I became a Christian when I was about 16, 17, when we were away at one of the youth fellowship weekends.
Shows how crucial Christian homes are and youth weekends, and never to take any of that for granted. And if the boys and girls here, you're thinking of being forced to come to another church service this evening, possibly the young people are only here because there's pizza with the pastors after, but it's actually a real wonderful blessing to have a Christian parents and to have this opportunity to explore faith for yourselves from a young age, and hopefully make a decision as William in P7 and Mandy in probably 5th form, or year 12 as it's now called. 2 years ago, you just got a phone call and a diagnosis that changed the trajectory of the last 2 years. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Okay, so yes, I've tried to make notes so I'll keep myself right, but it was actually Mother's Day 2023, and we'd been down here doing Kids Academy, and got home and was just getting into my jammies, and I looked in the mirror, and honestly, if I hadn't looked in the mirror, I wouldn't have found it, because it was dimpling underneath my breast, and what they found was that I had 3 lumps in there, but you couldn't detect them. So I really am so thankful to God from the very outset that I just happened to be passing the mirror as I was taking off my jammies, and otherwise it could have been a very different story, and for many it is. So God's hand was over it from like way before even, obviously. I mean, we know that we were brought here to this church for a reason. That it was, our time was up at Ballyholme Methodist, which we enjoyed, but we knew that we were here, and obviously we've been up here before talking about William's mental health a couple of years before, so we know that God's hand has been over all of it, but it's when you can see the detail, it's when it really does blow your mind a wee bit. So yeah, so I had to wait and go to the doctors, wait 6 weeks, which was hard enough. Again, songs we're singing this evening, waiting, there's a lot of waiting for people, and it's hard to do that, and it's hard to trust in that, but God asks us to be, and we were just teaching last week to the Kids Academy, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And I had to go to the breast clinic on my own because the COVID restrictions, even 2 years ago, you weren't allowed anybody. But my mum was in with Vicky doing the nursery, so that was covered, and you were at school, but other people were praying, and so I knew I wasn't on my own, even if I physically was. And then it's one of those situations where you're there with all these different ladies, and you keep going in and out of rooms, and then different ones throughout the morning disappeared, and you're like, oh, I'm still here. And then it's like another wee scan, another wee biopsy, and then it was 12 noon. I've been there since 9, and I was taken into the room with the sofa and the tissues, and that's when I thought, oh, right, okay, this means something. So even though I'd pretty much sort of accepted that it probably was cancerous, and when I did see it, I did say, I said out loud to God, okay, Lord, whatever you want to do with this, I'm up for it. I know you will guide me through it. But you still are shocked when the doctor says cancer cells have been found. I still wasn't quite ready for that. But I was okay. You're flung into this new world with all this jargon that you sort of catch a bit of it, but you don't really understand a lot of it. And then you Google, which you shouldn't do, but then you need a bit of information. So, and then you have to tell your family, you have to tell your mummy, you have to tell your boys, and you have to, accept. And in our home, we're very honest and open about everything, so it just makes it easier so that everybody knows how we're all doing at different times. So that really helped. And then, of course, back to nursery. Well, I went back to nursery that afternoon, but that was another story. Back to nursery the next day, and because Tom was there. My Tom. But back to nursery, and you're dealing with parents and you're dealing with children, and then all I kept thinking was, you have cancer, you have cancer. And that was sort of in the back of my head. So for about 2 weeks, that was fine. And then we got, we had to do scans. And then the first scan was the MRI scan, and not to be too indelicate, but for ladies have to get straight face down, and you're just hoping that everything goes in the 2 holes that it should do, and you're face down. It's so undignified. And then you're playing Space Invaders because the noise, you're shooting baddies and you don't know who you're shooting because of the noises. So it's just bizarre, very, very bizarre. And then you're waiting again. You're waiting on phone calls. You're waiting on the doctor phoning back. You're waiting on information. So the information came about 2 weeks in, and we went to the consultant's appointment, and they said, you've 3 lumps, something on your sternum, something on your lung, and something on your spine. And you're like, oh, all right. And then she says, so we should be able to do a lumpectomy, but we need to check what's on your sternum first. And then she wasn't very forthcoming with information. So I was like, so, pardon? And I said, so there's no operation if it's on your sternum. And I was like, right, so, which means, and then she hesitantly said that would mean bone cancer. And then I'm thinking, right, so, and she says, and that would be secondary cancer. And there's no treatment for that. So then you're suddenly into whoa, okay, we were at breast cancer. I could just about do with that. I could do with a lumpectomy, probably do a bit of radiotherapy, but now we're talking secondary cancer potentially. So that's when I thought I can't go to school anymore, and I was going to take 3 days off. It was the May bank holiday, and I thought, I'll need 3 days to get my head around this. And then God said, wise up. And that was that, and Vicky still kindly carried it on for me. But again, come to me all who are weary and I will give you rest. That was just God's message to me over that weekend. I remember phoning my mum at 6 in the morning and saying, Mummy, I think I have to take more time. And she was like, yes, this is massive. This doesn't get much bigger than that. So then we had 2 operations. One operation was grand, 3 lumps removed. Again, 2 more weeks. Then they said they hadn't clear margins and they had to go back in. So that was after my birthday. That was the 3rd of July. And then they found cancer in 1 lymph node. So that was the depressing thing, because up to that point it had been lumpectomy, radiotherapy, and then suddenly chemo was mentioned. And it was like, what? And yeah, so now you have to have chemo. So that's kind of where we got to. And I just had to then, again, God is on his throne. The Lord is reigning. I don't know what's going on, but the verse from Jeremiah, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. You just have to lean back on all the teaching we have and the memory verses we have and the songs that we have and just bed in, because you just can't take it in.
So for you, lots of your help came from what you already knew of God rather than trying to explore new.
Yeah, it's like why we teach children memory verses, isn't it? So that it's in there, so that it comes out at the right minutes, and songs, words, I'll talk about that later, really are helpful for me.
That was quite a roller coaster.
Yeah, sorry.
No. I'm trying to summarize it all. William, how is that part of the journey for you, watching on?
Well, it's, I remembered vividly because, and I have to allude, I have to go back in time. I'm watching my time. Sensibly, you have one mic, Kate. I remember going back 31 years ago, and my father had cancer. Sadly, he passed away from cancer. He was very young, he was only 53. So my experience of cancer was very, okay, right, this isn't great. And it is that thing, I remember at the time and thinking that no matter how much you love a person, no matter how much, you cannot take it away from them. You can't, I would have done anything to take that suffering away, not in a selfish way, just you don't want to see a loved one suffer, but you don't get the opportunity to do that, so you watch, and it's very, very difficult to be the one who watches. And I had a great counsellor in my mother, who's here tonight, and I was able to share a lot with her. She shared a lot with me, and that really helped, just to be able to talk it out at times and just share the deep sadness, the deep frustration, and never once, I don't recall being angry with God about it. I don't know, I think that's kind of, if I talk about my faith openly, even though I'm not good at always accepting God's will, I know his will is over all things. I hope I'm sticking to the question here, Keith. You know what I'm like when I get a mic.
No, it's
anything
good.
can happen. That verse kept coming back to me. The eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. And that is a verse from Deuteronomy 33:27, I believe, said by Moses. Old ancient words, and we're always mindful in Scripture not to take Scripture out of context, but that for me is a verse that applies not only way back, that is a verse that applies right into today's situations that we face. And that was a real help to me, that, we talk about the metaphoric rug being taken from beneath you. Well, let's do away with the rug for a minute. Underneath are the everlasting arms. There's great surety in that.
So you then began your chemo journey after operations, x-rays, scans, waiting. What were some of the highs and lows of that? What were some of the hardest parts in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think again it's a bit like the word cancer, isn't it? Chemo again has a whole big, scary thing, and it is. And the interesting thing I found is it's different for everybody. It's so individual. And when I was there was people getting injections. There were people having it every week. I had to have it every 3 weeks. And I mean, I sailed through it. Stella did not. She was amazing, and she had a much harder time than I did. But it's horrible, yeah. And I think the side effects, they make you sign a 17-page booklet with all these exciting side effects, and you just go, oh, yeah, that's no problem, yeah, I'll do that, that's fine. And then you're sitting there going, are you serious? Are my nails now sore? Are my fingers sore? My tongue is now white and I can't eat anything, and it's so sore to eat anything. You've headaches, you just feel so dull. I couldn't get, so I had chemo on the Wednesday, and then by the Thursday, Friday, you just couldn't get off the sofa on your own. You just had no energy to get up. And the boys had to help me. And our wee house is tiny, but even just to get from the living room to the stairs, and then to get that leg up onto the first step was mad. And I think one of the hardest things was, and I've said to him I'd say this, is, you know, in our house we have a lot of banter and daftness, and that's how we deal with life. And if everybody's not too well, there's not an awful lot of sympathy in our house, and it's kind of bantered out of you, you know. And it's like, you'll be fine. So the boys tried to do that, and Jamie Campbell is the biggest laugh in our house, and he was trying his wee best to get me going. And I could just see in his eyes that he just was like, she's not rising to this. Because I couldn't even smile, and that's, as you know, not me. And I just couldn't get my head above. And to see his face and to know in his eyes that he was so hurt for me was hard as a mummy, to want to take that away from your son, and to know that you couldn't, and to know that you had to do it 6 times. And that was hard, because it got worse. And after the 4th round, they changed the drugs, and it's much nastier. And I had to then, I think we were at the Giant's Causeway, and the doctor has to phone you. The way it worked for me was on the Tuesday, and you had to explain how you were feeling and how it had gone the time before. And I'm buffeted with all this wind, but I'm still having to say, well, yes, and I could, and was reaming off all these different side effects. Do you remember? And she says, I think we'll reduce your dose. And I was like, thank you, Lord. So for the last 5th and 6th, I just had 75% or 80% or something like that. So it was still bad enough. But no, so the best thing was you get better. So the first week is pretty rough, and the second week you still don't feel terribly great. But by you get to the 3rd week, you're getting back to yourself again. And, you know, we just both need to be at church. So, you know, even after the operation, and I know people were like, what are you doing? But I just had to be here. And even though I had my big cushion around me and just in the hub, I just needed to be here dwelling with all of you guys, because it's fine online, absolutely, but I just needed to be amongst God's people and with the people who loved me and who we knew loved me and us as a family, and to worship in this place was so important. And then to be able to, again, you know, Johnny Letty or Jonathan Ray were doing the rota, and we didn't ask for particular Sundays, but it landed on my 3rd weekend, and then it was like, oh man, that's brilliant, I can get up and worship the Lord, you know. And it's such a privilege to lead worship. We just love it, and it was just wonderful to be able to do that even amongst chemo. It only landed maybe a couple of times, but it was such a real privilege to do that. So yeah.
So then, was the impact of your faith on all of this, or was the impact on that on your faith? I mean, you've been very positive.
Do you want me to go? Can I keep going? Can you just settle in there, William? Settle in. I'm on a roll. Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Obviously, we're only human, and you have good days and you have bad days. And some days you just think, I don't know if I can do this today or if I can rise up to this today. And then one of you amazing people sent us a message. And you suddenly went, oh, that's right, they've got me. Friends from school who aren't Christians were sending me positive messages every day. You just got people saying, I'm praying for you today. And I would just totally encourage anybody, if you're ever thinking, I know I'm dreadful for hounding people with messages, but too bad, because it's great. And I would just encourage anybody, if you're feeling the Holy Spirit move you to message somebody, just do it, because it makes such a difference that you know that God's people are all around you, and God was just using all of you guys all of the time. And then God really blessed us with our family, so that really kept us strong, such a strong family, both sides of our family. And then again, the foundation of the Bible teaching has kept our faith strong. And then worship songs. So my cousin, I'm really close to my cousin Andrea, and she sent me a song quite early on, You're Still God. And I think, again, I'm a bit of a planner. If anybody who knows me, I love a grid, and I love a grid. And I didn't have a grid and I didn't have a plan, but I had to just then be happy to know that God did have a plan and that the Lord is on his throne. So this song was You're Still God, and if you don't mind, I'll just read out a few bits. When all foundations have been shaken and I'm left standing in the dark and all I feel is my heart breaking, you still reign and you're still God. And then it goes on to say, though I can't see what's before me, I know that I can trust your heart, and this one truth will be my story. You still reign and you're still God. When my enemies surround me, I'll trust the victory of your cross and fix my eyes upon you, Jesus, for you are God and I am not. You are good and you are faithful, as you have been from the start. You work in all things for your glory, because you still reign and you're still God. And that just so helped me to know that it wasn't about me, that God was in charge of it all, and I just had to play my part. And as a Christian, I've given my life to Jesus and to God, and for him to use it. And I think we were chatting earlier, it's such a privilege to be put through trials. We can see through other trials we've been through how God has used us and how God has worked through us, how he has purified us and is helping us to have better perseverance. And that was one of my baptismal verses too, and it's amazing when you see God's hand, when you pan out and you can see. So some days, better than others, but generally God has really blessed us through it, actually.
So songs have been a really help to you as your journey, and actually to hear truth sung to you can be helpful. William, post-treatment, how do you think this has changed you two?
Well,
Mandy's alluded to it, but...
Yeah, I mean, I joke with people and say that, do you ever watch the great Pottery Throwdown? There's a big man called Keith who cries at the drop of a hat, and that's in the UK thing.
Keith Beimer Jones?
Well, that's the guy, yeah. I love the guy, and I feel as if I've turned into a bit of a Keith, actually, in that respect, that I am. I mean, I've never been a big, tough kind of, hide your emotion kind of thing, but I do find that I think during going through it, you're very much, and it's a thing I constantly have to keep coming to God over, is that I like to be very self-reliant. I think, if there were show of hands of the blokes in here, a lot of guys are like that. They want to just, oh no, I'm fine, I can just get on with this and I can do it. And when I'm busy trying to prove myself to myself and others, I'm not really proving God. And if I'm not good at doing the self-reliant thing. I've realised that, and it's taken lesson upon lesson upon lesson for me to actually get to that. And God steps in and says, just let me take over here. You've nothing to prove. So now I think we're in a place where I suppose we can reflect on the journey so far. When I think, Mandy said about, and I realise I'm on the clock here, about the mental health issues and different things we've had in our lives. God has prepared us over those years and over the time since we've come to Hamilton Road, for those trials and for those tribulations, and where it's that old expression, stop of the world, I want to get off. We'll know, God, where are you taking us here? What's next? How can we, God does things for our benefit and His ultimate benefit and His ultimate glory. So to accept that and to kind of know that is a big thing. We as a family, I think I can say this hand on heart, we pray more. You sort of think what we're doing for the last however many years. We've always prayed, but now our routine is we wake. Mandy has the prayer made app. Mandy is, you will get messages, people will get messages from Mandy. She's brilliant at it. I'm weak at it, but she's really good. And we have this prayer made app, and we go through the list. We're loving and the New Testament readings. And we're keen, there's 4 of us in the house, and we're keen to do those. Sometimes we'll let David Suchet have a go. And we've had Jamie doing the King James version as well, which has been, very interesting. But we're more keen, we're more enthused, we're more eager for God. I think that's what I would say.
Well, that's a wonderful outcome. And yet through such difficulties. We are on the clock a little bit, but Mandy, what advice would you give somebody who's possibly going through treatment, has a loved one going through treatment, or even human cancer is going to hit lots of us in some way? What advice would you give, having been through your cancer journey?
Well, that's the thing, and I think I'd been watching the Bake Off beforehand, and it had gone up to 1 and 2, hadn't it? And that was like, oh, crikey. So, I think that's the thing. I think my main thing is that reach out to people, because God puts people out there for you, and we were amazingly blessed. And I'm not going to cry, but we went through chemo with Jimmy and Sandra Waddell. Jimmy took chemo the same day as me up in the city, and I was in the Ulster, and we kept in touch with each other every other day, and Sandra looked after me just as much as she looked after Jimmy, and he had a better appetite than me, mind you. He didn't have a sore tongue, but we kept in touch. So God had put people in our path, and the very fact that God has blessed me with Stella and with Gillian Wilson, Gillian Wimpers, Andy McAnally, Heather McConnell, there are so many people that God will use to help you. So don't suffer on your own. Don't be silent. Reach out to other people and ask for prayer, because it is amazing when and I mean, I was getting messages upon messages, and I may not have been able to answer them all at the same time, but every single message meant so much, and you knew that people were holding you in prayer when you were having surgery, when you were out of surgery, when you were having chemo. It was incredible, and I would really encourage everybody to do that, to shout out and ask people, be brave and say, look, could you pray specifically for that or the next thing? And also, I suppose it's in one of the songs we were singing, it's only for a season. Thankfully for me, it was only for a season. I've had to accept, it's taken about a year, that I'm still a cancer patient. I'm not just Mrs. Campbell, nursery teacher. I thought I'd put it all behind me, and then sure, my hand blew up, and then my knees are somewhat wrecked. But that's okay. But I have to accept that that's part of my life now. And when you get another pain somewhere, you sort of go, is that like there's something on my lung, but they don't really care about it. I'll get a CT scan in April, but it's fine. But your brain sort of kicks on. So again, it's just trying to keep praying yourself, handing that over, and just use whatever works for you. Worship songs works for me, memory verses. So many people give me beautiful devotions during the day to use and different things. So we've been so blessed. God provided from everything. And then sure, with food ministry in this church is something else. Amen. So honestly, everybody to provide for other people, we are so, so blessed.
Great. Final question to you, William. I was sitting beside Tom this morning, and your photo kept up and said, "There's Mrs. Campbell and the bald guy." So I blame his nursery teacher. So last comments to the bald guy. What sort of words would you give to somebody watching on, trying to support somebody going through, and also seeking support for yourself, because its impact on both people? What advice would you give to the husband or wife of a cancer patient?
Yeah, I suppose, just be there for the person. Just be there. There is that feeling of helplessness. You can feel pretty useless. Your mind can go all over the place in it. There's a feeling of desperation. If people are there, accept those invites. Accept, if someone said to you, "Do you want to get together?" It's not always easy, mind you. It's not always straightforward, to be able to do that. But as I say, I've mentioned my mother, and I've very good brothers as well, and I've a wonderful church family here as well. And through it, people reached out. As Mandy said, you could feel the prayers, you could sense the prayers. You felt uplifted. I would say, we're talking about baptism verses. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us, run with perseverance, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Those were my verses, and they're very, very special. Fixing our eyes. God has a plan, even though sometimes we can't trace it. We can't trace it. We can trust it. We can trust God's plan in our lives.
Yeah. Well, it's been a real privilege to hear from you, where we could have talked for a lot longer, but we're so thankful that God has brought you through what He has, and the way that you have ministered to others through as well. Let's give Him a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks. Thank you.